Well, hey, so I'm super excited to have Todd Terrell with me here on the podcast. Thanks for being here, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, we met a few years ago. Right. Gosh, about maybe 4 or 5 years ago.
Time
in 2020.
flies.
We met in 2020.
Yeah. We were 20 when we met.
We were 20 when we met. That's right. So it's been, but yeah, man, I've gotten to we partnered on a few things, just as far as being, y'all being boots on the ground, done some things together. But I've just slowly gotten to know you, and you're an interesting fella. I mean, you're the leader of the Cajun Navy, which is interesting enough. But I mean, your family's huge in the seafood business, scuba diving for logs.
It's been a lifelong bunch of adventure, that's for sure.
Yeah. So y'all's family started in the seafood business, though, correct?
Yeah, my great aunt started a seafood business in 1932.
Wow.
In Louisiana, and it was pretty interesting because back in the day, women were still mistreated a lot and wasn't respected or whatever. And she went to the bank to try to borrow some money, and the bank wouldn't lend her no money because she was a woman.
Wow.
And she would actually take some jewelry and stuff and go to the pawn store and pawn it, get enough money to buy some crawfish or catfish or whatever, sell it, go pay the pawn shop off, and that kept going on for a while. She finally started getting so successful that the bank started knocking on her door, and basically she gave them the finger and said, "We don't need you. I've got enough money to where we can do it ourselves."
Wow.
And then, they got into the wholesale portion where they started selling little restaurants and stuff, and then it got passed down to my grandfather and my uncle, and then it got passed down to my mom, and then, of course, my sister and I helped Mom run the business through the years. And then we sold it in 1998, and everybody kind of got out of it. We got into another version of the seafood business after 98, and then Katrina came, and, of course, everybody knows what happened to Katrina.
Right.
So, you work all your life, and then next thing you know, here comes a disaster, and that's what got me to this point about helping other people.
So y'all's business got taken out from
everybody.
Katrina.
Not only did the business get taken out, but our customers did. In the wholesale business, you have customers you sell to. They lost their restaurants. They lost their homes. So they didn't have no money. They couldn't pay. You can't sue somebody for something they don't have.
Right.
So it was pretty much just a licking we all took. And then going back to the bank situation, we didn't borrow money. So it wasn't like we could have filed bankruptcy or anything because we were self-sufficient.
Wow.
So it was kind of like the old stories we say the bank was robbed.
Wow.
Yeah.
Man, so that was nobody desired to revitalize the seafood business. That was just the end of it.
It was so hard because when you don't have bank loans and you don't have that, it's not like you can go to the bank and they could refinance you or anything. At that point, the banks knew that we were basically a wounded duck, so they didn't want to lend any money.
Okay.
And, we had put a lot of our life savings into this, and a lot of our money that we were making, we were reinvesting in the business. So, it was tough,
Wow.
And then imports started coming in, import shrimp and crawfish started coming in. And so it just made it even tougher, And unfortunately, a lot of the customers we had were out of town. They were up north. They was in Vegas. They was in the East Coast. And they didn't care that Katrina came and wiped us out. They just wanted seafood.
Right.
So they started buying imports. And then when we were able to try to maybe think about getting on our feet again, we had no customers.
Because you can't compete with their prices.
You can't compete with their prices, yes. And then since then, you had the BP oil spill and several hurricanes. So it was kind of the right time. It was just a misfortune that, Katrina came and took our lives away, basically. On the flip side, it gave us an opportunity to pick our bootstraps up and go back to work. There's two things you can do. You can cry, you can whine, and you can, sit there and pour me, or you can get back up and work. Through the years, my mom had a lot of money that she was lending to people or fishermen or stuff when things were tough. And so, and they wouldn't pay her back, and stuff. So she would be like, "Oh, bring me back some wood, or bring me back a cypress knee, or bring me back a tree." And they started doing that. And then next thing you know, we got into the cypress wood business.
Okay.
So these were cypress logs and driftwood.
Yeah.
A lot of people that mount ducks or crabs on pieces of wood, as these fishermen were bringing stuff into us, and Mom would be like, "Here's $100, here's $200, here's $500. They would bring us some driftwood or something. And so that was kind of her way of getting repaid. Wow. And then from there, people started coming to us for the wood and the logs. And next thing you know, we had furniture people calling us for big slabs of cypress and stuff. So it just kind of took off from there. So,
wow.
Out of the ashes came the phoenix.
So have you ever been a part of going after the sinker logs?
Yes, I sure have.
How do you even find them?
Well, there's several ways. These are old logs that we call them old growth timber. It's the ones like I say when the dinosaurs were here, basically, which is a little bit far-fetched, but it's old stuff. Back in the day when they were building homes and stuff, they would cut these big logs, and if they were too big to move or whatever, they would just fall in the water or they would fall in the swamp. A lot of times they would raft them together, and as they were rafting them out, when the waters got high, the rafts would break and they would just sink. Lightning would hit a lot of them. So you got these big old pieces of cypress that are in the swamp that are just floating. So there's two separate ways. We'll get the floaters, and when the water comes up, we get in there and pull them out. And these crawfishermen that are in the woods crawfishing, they know where these logs are. So, when I started out pulling them when we first started, then it got to the point to where these fishermen would tell us where they were, so we would pay other people to go in there and pull them out. So that's kind of how we started.
Okay.
And, you got driftwood. We make tables out of it. We don't do it ourselves, but we send it to people to do.
Sure.
Mantles, fireplaces. It's a pretty cool thing. It's interesting to see because it's not like you're just cutting down pine trees and cutting 2x4s. Every piece of wood is different.
Yeah.
We found some wood that had old chains in them, musket balls,
Come on.
where people might have shot a deer or a squirrel or something like that, and the musket ball got in the tree. So it's pretty interesting, the history of it.
Yeah, it's like the piece of wood has some history, has a story.
Right. It might have been a person they were shooting at. You
Right.
never know.
Wow. And I'm sure that those pieces of wood are more valuable if they
They're
have some
definitely more valuable, especially the ones that have the chains in them, where they chain them together to pull them out.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's not good on the saws because it messes the blades up, but it's good for history.
Right. So is that what after Katrina, did you focus on that, building that business?
Yes, we focused on that because it wasn't a lot of capital outlay involved in it. You had a boat, you had fuel, you had a little bit of labor involved in it, and go pulling the logs.
Okay.
It wasn't like we had to have money for inventory.
Right.
In the seafood business, during crawfish season, when crawfish season was over with, we had froze a lot of crawfish tails, and put them in the freezer for later on during the year so everybody could have, crawfish tails. But that costs money. You got money in the cost of the crawfish, the labor to peel them, the freezer to put them up. So the wood was basically there for the taking, and that's where we ended up. So it gave me an opportunity to get back on my feet.
Okay. That's just free merchandise. You just got to get it.
Pretty much just got to get it, yeah. And the old cypress, it's got a natural insecticide in it. The bugs don't get to it, and it doesn't rot.
Okay.
The old growth stuff. So, it was there, and it's been there for hundreds of years, and it's not going anywhere.
Wow. So being underwater, it's preserved. It's not
underwater or on top of the water. It doesn't even have to be under the water.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't rot. Now, the new cypress, if you cut a new cypress tree down, it's going to rot, and the bugs are going to get to it. It's not like the old growth.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool. So y'all are still in that business?
Yeah, not on a big scale, anymore.
Okay.
But, life kind of takes you in different directions, and, the Cajun Navy kind of takes a lot of my time.
Right.
The cypress business is good. There's certain times of the year when the water's high, we go in there and we get it. So, it gives me a lot of opportunity to have a lot of free time.
So it's a season. I remember you telling me that.
It's pretty much
like
a season.
Okay.
We know in the spring when the water's up, we can get in there and pull the logs out, and later in the summer, when the water goes down, you can't get in there and pull them. Then you got hunting seasons that come. You don't want to be in the woods when these guys are hunting.
Smart.
So,
yeah. That's crazy. So you are the founder of the United Cajun Navy, the first Cajun Navy, correct?
We go back to Hurricane Katrina. What a lot of people don't understand.
Oh, it started in Katrina because I thought 16.
What a lot of people don't understand is we were called, Kathleen Blanco, who was the governor back then, we went in, and being in the seafood business, we had boats, and we had a lot going on in New Orleans and the Biloxi area. My family had a camp on the mouth of the Pearl River in Mississippi. So Kathleen Blanco called us the Cajun Navy. We were given a lot of thanks back then.
Okay.
So basically, it was just a bunch of guys with boats and trucks that went in there and helped.
Yeah.
And many years passed. There wasn't social media back then. We were just known as the Cajun Navy.
Yeah.
And everybody would say, "Hey, Mr. Cajun Navy." When you fast forwarded a few years, some other groups formed officially. It became a money thing.
Sure.
And it became a thing where people wanted to organize to get in funds, and we were still old school, just wanting to help people.
Right.
2017, Hurricane Harvey came, and we had the boats. We were known for having the boats.
Yeah.
And then I still wasn't that big with social media, but we got a quick lesson on you better get used to social media because that's where you get your
funding.
Your funding and your boats and stuff from.
Yeah.
So I was kind of forced into forming a nonprofit. We had a lot of people that wanted to help us. We had a lot of people that wanted to give us fuel and supplies. But they said, you have to be a nonprofit.
Right.
And I didn't want to start a nonprofit, getting out of a business, that knowing the ins and outs and the pluses and minuses of businesses. But we were kind of forced to. We had gotten so big with volunteers and stuff, and we were putting this out of pocket. We had to form a nonprofit.
Okay.
And that's how it started there.
Wow. Yeah, I didn't realize y'all started in Katrina. It wasn't like a thought through thing.
It was more of a name.
You just kind of went for it.
Yeah, it was more of a name. We went for it. It wasn't an official legal entity back then.
So you didn't have vision to start something. You just started helping people.
No, basically it was my friends, ourselves, our family, relatives were affected by this, and it was just out there helping.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much the way it started.
I love that. Like, it didn't start with ambition. The ambition was to help people. You had the resources, you had the things, you saw the need, and y'all went for it.
Oh yeah. And you go back to in 2016, I'll never forget this. The mayor of Denham Springs, we showed up over there with some boats, and we were like, we're here to help. And he was like, he looked at us like he didn't even know what to do. Nobody had experienced this kind of stuff before. He said, just do something. So immediately we kicked in and we started helping, there. So the government is there. They do a good job of certain things of what they do. But the reality is there's only so much they can do. They need the citizens to stand up.
Because you don't have all the red tape, the concern. I mean, you have liability, but not like the city or state would.
You go back to 2016, 90% of first responders were affected.
Yeah.
You think about that.
Wow.
Ambulance, firemen, sheriffs, police officers, workers, 911, all of these people were affected. And when I say affected, their homes were flooded, their families were affected, homes were flooded. They couldn't get to work because the water was high. They didn't have a boat. So, if you're working, I don't care if you're a sheriff, a cop, or EMS, and your house is flooding, your thing is to take care of yourself first. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? You got to secure your mask first.
Yeah.
So you can't help the outsiders. So what we've learned going back to, hurricanes, not just Katrina, but 2016, is we make sure that the first responders are taken care of.
Wow.
Whether it's food, whether it's clothing, whether it's, Gatorade, beef jerky, whether it's saying, hey, the sheriff or the first responders say, we can't get our guys to work. We're like, we'll go pick them up. We'll make sure they're fed. We'll make sure that they have dry clothes or whatever. And so that's kind of how the Cajun Navy started growing so fast, And in Hurricane Harvey, it was just mass chaos.
Yeah.
You couldn't get into Texas because the state line coming from Louisiana to Texas was flooded. Mm-hmm. So you had to have high water vehicles to even get into Texas. So
what year was that? Was that 18?
That was in 2017.
17, yeah.
Yes.
Late 17.
Late 2017, yeah. And it was about 10 days of just rescuing people. Mm-hmm. And some of the stories there, we was in certain parts of Texas, and I was pretty much in Baton Rouge for the majority of the time kind of running operations. We had this one area where we had over 200 boaters, and they went down this road, and there was about 2 foot of water on the road. And I got a call from one of the judges over there, one of the county officials, and he said, "Todd, get out." I said, "I can't get my guys out. They can't back up. They can't turn around." He said, "One of the dams is about to overtop," and he says, "There's about to be 6 to 10 foot of water where your guys are." So immediately, we look for the veterans and the guys that have some pretty good experience that are not going to panic. Immediately, I reached out to some of them and I said, just find the high spots, get the boats off the trailer. You're probably going to lose some trucks. Get the boats off the trailer, save your lives. And that's what they did.
Wow.
And out of about 200 vehicles, I think they lost about 15 or 16, but the majority of them were able to get to high ground. They got the boats off the trailer. As they were rescuing people, they brought them to one-story roofs on houses to get them away. Now, can you imagine? It's dark. You got your family. You've probably never been in a boat before. Some strangers come and get in the boat with me. They drop you off on the roof. People are screaming. They got a dog maybe. The kids are crying. They don't have nothing to eat, nothing to drink, and they're saying, "We're coming back to get you." They don't want you to leave because they don't want to be alone. So as many people as we rescued, and they said it was almost 2,000 people in this one location.
Wow.
The next evening, we didn't know what to do. Well, then they called us and they said another dam's about to open. They're saying, "You're about to lose everybody." They went and took those people and brought them to 2-story roofs.
Man.
And so can you imagine? Now somebody's coming and telling you, bring you to this, get in the boat, and they're dropping you off. So then the military got involved. They started dropping through the helicopters. They started dropping water and MREs and stuff to us so we could bring it to the people. And I think it was 3 or 4 days before those people were finally rescued.
Wow.
So, when you go back and look at it, Katrina, depending on what numbers you look at, there was over 1,800 people that were dead in Katrina.
My goodness.
There was a lot more because a lot of them weren't found. Hurricane Harvey, that number should have been or could have been a lot higher or upwards of Katrina had it not been for a lot of volunteers. And not just Cajun Navy, but anybody.
Yeah.
There was a lot of people helping, a lot of locals. And pretty much anybody that had a boat became Cajun Navy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Our first, we started Purpose Church in 2018. Our first mission trip, we had gathered like a team of volunteers, was in 2017. We went up to Houston.
Right.
We did mud outs, cooked jambalaya for this whole church congregation, and we're a part of that. And I think that's why you and I, aligned so well because, I was, kind of working with the Cajun Navy before I even knew you.
Before you even knew us,
in 16, I went out on a rescue, which was very exciting. It was a mud boat and high current. We were trying to rescue people from Santa Maria, but they were in their top story. They didn't. We're good. We don't want to go. But I mean, I remember some of the people in that area, Bayou Manchac, were getting shot at, like shooting at the Cajun Navy for driving their boats by.
Well, you know, I know one story in particular. It was off of Choctaw in Greenville Springs area. This old black man, it was pitiful. They was in an area, and it was 3 or 4 foot of water in their area. And some of the subdivisions, you may have 3 foot in this house, and you might have 8 foot in this house, depending on how the terrain is. And as actually, we have a video about it that I had posted. This old gentleman, they had been breaking in and looting in his neighborhood. And we went in there and we were trying to get some of the people out. We were like, you know what, come on, we'll bring you. He didn't want to leave. He had 2 guns, and these guns looked like they were from the Revolutionary War. And he was holding them. He pulled them out, and he said, this is all I've got. I'm not leaving. And he says, I wish somebody would come back here. He said, I wish they would. And when that happened, I realized how dire and how drastic these people's situation was at that point. You know, when you got somebody that lost everything, he's got 6 foot of water in his house. He's standing in 3 foot of water with 2 guns that may or may not work, and he's like, I'm not leaving. You know, we knew at that point that we're on to something, and you know, we got to start helping these people more.
Wow.
You know? But yeah, they had one gentleman. He was off of O'Neill, at the end of O'Neill back in there by that big subdivision, and we were driving around, and there was about 2 foot of water, and we knew the water was going to come up about another 6 or 8 feet. And we tried to get him out. It was at night. We had big spotlights. This man come out with a shotgun, and he threatened to shoot us. He racked his gun, and he was going to shoot us. And we said, sir, we're just here to tell you the water's going to get high. You know, he yelled at us or whatever, a few words. Next morning at daylight, we came back, and there was 6 foot of water there. And we told him, I said, sir, you know, the water's going to come up about another 6 or 8 feet. You're going to have about 12 to 15 foot of water here. He got in the boat with us, and he didn't want to. And the whole time he carried his gun and was looking at us. And I'm not going to say we didn't give him the ride of his lifetime, but we gave him the ride of his lifetime to get him out.
Wow.
And so, and there were some other people that were shot at and stuff during the time.
Yeah.
But you know, when you got people that lost everything, and it's an experience to deal with when you lost everything.
Oh, you know? Man. Yeah, I love that. Y'all just, I mean, unrestricted, able just to be crazy Cajuns and go where government regulations would stop you from going.
There's a couple articles out there about dealing with the consequences later, because we've dealt with some consequences of our actions, you know, but I would never, ever go back and undo the stuff that we did.
Of course.
The consequences we dealt with, because every consequence that we had to deal with, there was always lives saved.
Yeah. And I love that over the years, y'all, you know, that's the primary what y'all started with, but it's kind of y'all have broadened your reach. I mean, I know y'all have been such a blessing to us as a ministry. I mean, supplying us. I mean, we've given thousands of Christmas gifts away for the past 3 or 4 years, and the majority of those gifts have come through the Cajun Navy. People donating, you get them to us, we distribute them to the neighborhood, and that's not a disaster, but it's just loving people and supplying their needs.
I think that we have the model. You know, the model is people helping people. Yeah. And believe it or not, I pray for no storms. Yeah. Like right now, you know, we're dealing with this Texas situation, North Carolina still. And of course, it's hurricane season, but we're still not in the heat of the hurricane season. Yeah. You know, August, September is when it gets really bad. So believe it or not, I pray for no hurricane, because we have so much going on. Yeah. You know, we do a couple of 100,000 toys for Christmas every year. We don't start till October. We've probably got about 3/4 of that number already in this year. So we're going to really bust our numbers this year. Yeah. We had a fishing tournament 2 weeks ago in Hammond where we had 436 kids, and every one of them got a rod and reel to go home with.
That's awesome.
Jim Bob with the Team Up for All and Redneck Adventures, he said, we're going to have about 150 kids. Well, I knew he was kind of fudging a little bit when he kept calling me and saying, do you have more rods than 150? And so the day before, we got the word that it was going to be closer to 350. Well, it was 436. Wow. And believe it or not, we had a little bit of extra rides because a lot of them had brought them from the year before. The year before, it was 100 kids at this thing. So we do a lot of stuff to help people. Yeah. And as you know, Keep Tigertown Beautiful with Jennifer Richardson and cleaning up. Kathy Coleman with Grandparents Raising Grandchildren. Right. So we have the model, and that's why we have supplies all the time. Yeah. You know, and thank goodness for y'all with Purpose Church. I mean, y'all have been a blessing for us.
Yeah. And you mentioned pray for no storms several years ago, because you and I, we share a property.
That's correct.
And a few years ago, we had no storms, no issues, and y'all were struggling.
Yeah.
So you pray for no storms, which makes y'all struggle as an organization.
Yeah.
But I texted you I think it was last year. I was like, boy, y'all got plenty of action now.
Well, there's a lot of people that want to help.
Yeah.
And then we do a lot with Amazon. Amazon gives us a lot of returns, which is a great thing. But it's also it's a bad thing sometimes because, when you get in pallets and gaylords of stuff, sometimes it's just stuff and you got to sort through it.
Oh, my gosh.
So that creates a
What was
problem.
that, the storms? Was that the floods in North Carolina? Or is it in the Carolina? No, it was in, the Carolinas last year.
Yeah.
I mean, how many Amazon trucks came through the Jones Creek? I mean, thousands of Amazon trucks.
In fact, I don't even know how we did it at y'all's property. We have 3 warehouses in Baton Rouge, and the one there, I mean, they were all the way to Jones Creek, and I looked down and they say, "Man, you got 18 wheelers lined up on Jones Creek."
It was
in fact,
crazy.
The sheriff even called me and he says, "I'm gonna send some deputies over there to help y'all." It's pretty cool, And the good thing about it is people work together.
Yeah.
I've said it in a crazy way. Sometimes I believe God puts these things in our life to bring people together.
Yeah.
It really does.
Yeah.
It's not all easy.
No.
And it's not all perfect. One of the things that we're struggling with right now is AI.
Mm-hmm.
There was a situation a couple of days ago where online, everybody, national news, big meteorologists, there wasn't a person there that didn't run this story about these 2 little kids that were in a tree in 20 foot of water that were saved. They had a great picture of it. It looked very, very real.
Yeah.
It turns out it was not true.
It was not a true story.
Not a true
Because we
story.
saw that, Angel and I saw that, and I was
Yes.
like, man, I don't know if this is true.
We all were duped by that one.
Wow.
And the crazy thing about it was we had 4 of the national big news agencies that called us and asked us if it was our people. And I said, no. I said, I didn't even hear about it. So about 2 hours later, we got a call, and they said, Todd, he said, make sure you tell your people that's not a true story. But AI made it look very, very
It's
real.
so convincing.
So
It's
convincing.
wild.
Yes. And
It's dangerous.
AI is great, but
Yeah.
it's also got its challenges right now.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. And I love that. You started off, just meeting a need of the masses. And then at some point, like when there was a lost child or someone, because I know that's one thing that I really love about you is y'all have that one ambulance that it was.
we got 2 now. I didn't tell you about the second one, but we got 2
But the first one was given to you because y'all found a child.
Yes.
And the family donated it, I believe.
Well, what happened was it was 2018, and I was going through some personal struggles at that time. Just you get mentally tired.
Yeah.
You get to a point in life where you get older and you lose everything. And going back to Katrina, and you're thinking, man, here I am in this place in life to where. I didn't think that I'd end up in life, losing, the family business, history, and everything else with Katrina and everything. And so I told God, I've been pumping a lot of personal money into the Cajun Navy, at that point.
Yeah.
And I told God I prayed, and I said, man, give me a sign. I said, this is my calling, maybe, but it's an expensive calling that may not be a calling. It may just be go buy a boat and go fishing. And about 15 minutes later, my phone rang, and it was a gentleman. He said, my cousin is lost in Lake Pontchartrain. And he said, the Coast Guard is going to call the search off at dark. Now, we had already found, several recoveries through the years or whatever. But this one hit me hard because I said, let's go. I called Danny McGlynn, brother, and I said, let's go, out here and let's find this person. We get out there. The family was there. It was a 31-year-old girl, Sadie Thibodeau. And she had gone missing off of a sailboat 2 days before. Had some bad weather and whatever. And so the weather was real bad. It was one of those days where it was an afternoon thunderstorm. And you get these pop-up storms that last 30 minutes, it goes, and it gets sunny again. And I met the mother and the father there, and we were waiting for the rain to stop. We were underneath this pavilion by the lakefront, and we'd pulled our boat up. And lady, you thought we were God showing up there. And she was like, go get my baby. And I said, Miss Debbie, I said, sometimes God puts things in our lives to make us find things and whatever. And I said, I believe this is it. And I turned around and I said, what have I just said? I just told this lady we're going to find her daughter. You know what I'm saying? I said, the Coast Guard had been looking for 48 hours. So the rain stopped about 30 minutes later. And I told him, I said, go put the boat in the water. I said, because we may have to go to a different landing because I just told this lady we're going to find her daughter. We went out there, and the Coast Guard was about 3 miles away from us. And I was like, go here, stop, go here, go start. Long story short, within 10 minutes, we found a body. It was right there.
Wow.
And that changed my life because we had been trying to raise money for an ambulance because I wanted a mobile command unit, And in 3 months, we had raised like $12.
Wow.
We sucked at raising money back then. And the family wanted to do something for us. And I said, well, you can share our fundraiser. Well, that weekend after the funeral, they raised $19,710.12. I'll never forget it. We needed $20,000 to buy this mobile command. So we put an extra $30, $40, whatever it was, and bought it. Well, Hurricane Helene was approaching. This was on a Sunday when they gave us the check. Hurricane Helene was approaching like that week, So I'm like, cool, let's take the mobile command and let's go to, North Carolina. And that's what we did. We got it. We took the stickers off of it. We bought it. Went over there, had a tough time getting insurance because they didn't want to insure an ambulance. We said, it's not an ambulance, it's a mobile command. And long story short, he went out there and the rest is history. So that kind of changed my life.
Yeah.
And when you look back on stuff, we all had those one moments or so that we can say, this was it.
Yeah.
So I believe that God said he didn't want me to stop. And then from there, there's been several times where I said, man, God, I need that sign again. I don't use it all the time.
Yeah.
And boom, here comes
just need some encouragement
blessing.
from you.
Yeah. And so, but that vehicle has actually saved a lot of lives.
Wow.
We went straight from North Carolina into Florida. There was a lady that was impaled by a tree. And we had some trauma doctors from Johns Hopkins Hospital that were in it. And they saved her life. And since then, you get volunteers that, they have cuts or need shots or they have, heart conditions or whatever. People we rescue. So we actually take care of our own medical needs during a disaster.
Yeah.
Wow. And it's also our way of communicating with the government. We have computers and stuff in it there.
Okay.
So, but that changed my life. 2018 changed my life.
Yeah. Man, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So rescuing people, supplying for the community. I mean, I remember during the wildfires in California. I mean, I talked to my friends up there and I'm like, man, we need supplies. And we as a church, we couldn't do much financially. But I was like, I can make this phone call. And you had 3 or 4 18-wheelers en routes.
It's kind of crazy. We have FedEx, UPS, all the big companies that are competing with each other to say, hey, we got trucks, come get the stuff. So we'd have FedEx and UPS lined up there, and UPS is a big supporter of us.
Big Brown.
Big Brown, Big Brown. He's noisy Big Brown.
Yeah.
But one direction that we've gone into is our chaplain, Tony Dickey.
Okay.
Whenever you rescue somebody, or whether we're on a search, when a body is found, when a recovery is made, you have closure. Mm-hmm. You can have the services and you can know that person is gone to the afterlife.
Right.
You can understand that.
So that's why it's so important to find the body.
That's why it's so important to have the body.
That makes sense.
On the flip side, many times the bodies are not found. And so what happens is the families need that comfort. The government does their work, but they don't give you hugs. The government don't come in and say, hey, we're going to sit with you the whole time and explain the process. Most recently, here in Texas, our team personally has found 11 of the 100 bodies.
Wow.
One of the guys is a coach, and his 6-year-old daughter is missing. Nobody's talking to him, whatever. So our chaplain is there comforting him and kind of filling him in the process. Sometimes closure is no closure.
Wow.
And that's the way it is. And so Tony Dickey, who's our chaplain, mass casualty, he's been to Uvalde school shooting, the Miami building collapse. Because a lot of those people, especially in the Miami building collapse, they never were found, 2 weeks ago, the little 10-year-old girl that went missing in Destin, we were there the whole time on the search. And we knew that we were up against all the odds. I mean, the Destin Pass, the Gulf of Mexico, unfortunately, her body is just washed out to sea somewhere, And so Tony was there to comfort the family, to let them know that, hey, even though you may think the Coast Guard gave up, when you look around, you got hundreds of strangers, and these were all strangers that were helping. So it gives the family comfort knowing that it's in God's hands, So that's a big part of it. So our chaplain, Tony, right now is actually in Texas with the families of the ones that are not just the ones that the bodies are recovered, but the ones that are still missing.
Wow.
To kind of let them down for that, what if there's no closure?
Man. So that this has been biggest news story currently, the Guadalupe River that, it rose very fast.
30-something feet in an hour and a half.
And there's this whole. We don't even know the amount of people missing at this point, right?
They know it's about 10 campers from the kids' school that are still left.
Right.
The reason they don't know who else is missing because it was an area where there's a lot of campgrounds.
And it was a holiday weekend.
A lot of holiday weekends. You have a lot of people that pull their campers there, so they didn't know. The campgrounds don't keep track of who's at their campground. Oh. So we have a camp today It's about 10 miles down from one of the campgrounds. There's a mobile home. It's not a mobile home. It's a camper. It's upside down. All you can see is about 6 inches of the wheels. And our guys, they busted into it yesterday, the bottom of it, but they had to get out because there was another 4 to 6 foot wall of water coming down because more rain. And people say, well, why do they stay there if you got 4 to 6 foot more water coming down? You got to understand, this river has left so much mud and debris that it's now 15, 20, 30 foot full of debris. So that 6 foot of water would have been nothing had it not been for all that mud that's there now.
Okay.
So it's almost like they plugged up a hole. So what's going to happen now is you're going to have a lot of flooding in that area that is just a couple feet of water.
Wow.
Because it's like they filled in some holes, basically.
Right.
So our guys right now are kind of trying to get some pumps to get the water away from it so they can get in there and hopefully recover some more missing people out of there.
Yeah. So how does it work, Todd, as far as like, what was it last week? We get, there's flooding. How does like the first phone call work? I mean, do you see it on the news? Like, hey, get your crew together. Like, how does it work?
That's a great question. We saw that we needed better meteorology information. We needed better weather information. The old school way of meteorology is, high today near 90, 70% chance of thunderstorms, afternoon rain. That's what you usually get. We got to know what's going on.
Yeah.
So we got with Jeff George. He's a meteorologist for the military as well as the state of Florida Public Broadcasting, and we got our own weather app. We got with some storm chasers. Reed Timmer. He's one of the big storm chasers. The one that gets up next to the tornado and shoots the rockets up into it. So we got real-time information. So we knew the day before that area was going to have some rain. So our team was kind of like put on alert that, there may be a chance that we may be needed. So with Reed and them, with the storm chasers, we knew right away that there was going to be a problem. Early Saturday morning. This happened Friday night. So we started getting calls immediately, when you see it on social media. A lot of times the government will call us, we'll get some calls, especially if it's a smaller town or something, Next thing you know, we just jump into action, and that's what happened. Now, this case here, it's kind of sad. There's so many people that want to come help.
Yeah. But
it's targeted to a riverbank, and there's still a lot of people missing. It's muddy, it's hot. So you need cadaver dogs and stuff. So we're actually bringing in our mule team from North Carolina to come in. WFB did a story last night. They're in there to bring in the mules. Because these mules can step over debris, These mules they're mules for a reason, Believe it or not, they even put some cadaver dogs on their backs to get them in some of the 3-4 foot of mud.
Wow.
Get them in there. So it's a pretty big process, The government, these task force teams, Louisiana sent 13 or 14 of our firemen for over there. These guys are trained in water rescue and stuff. Sometimes you can't be trained into 20 or 30 foot of mud that's coming down where, you're trying to get a camper out of 15, 20 foot of mud and all you see is the tires.
Yeah.
You got to have specialized equipment. And, then you got a quarter of a mile or half a mile of mud, you can't get to it. So in the meantime, you have people that are missing that are possibly in these campers, and you got the families that are sitting there saying, why can't you get my loved one out of there? So it's not as easy as it thinks. It's not like it's a river or something where we're trying to get down and we know the structure. So it's a mess, Yeah. So and then you got first responders and people that need food, they need water. So we have caterers there, and y'all have been a blessing for cooking for us for there. I think I remember the last storm y'all went and cooked.
St. Pete.
There's been so many of them. St. Pete.
Not St. Pete. What was that? Fort Myers.
Fort Myers. Yeah, y'all went down there and cooked for us.
Trip from hell, man.
So it's not just the people that that lost everything that need food, but it's volunteers.
Yeah.
It's first responders.
Well, and if you take care of them, they're able to go and
secure your mask first. If your mask is secured, you can help other people.
Yeah.
But if your mask is not secured and you're hungry and you're tired, and right now these guys and girls that are in there helping rescue in the mud. Their boots may be 12, 18 inches where they're in 2 and 3 foot of mud. Yeah. So their feet get muddy. So just something simple as socks right now, and different boots are good to have.
Yeah. So when you get the phone call, through your team, we're going to be needed. Okay, we are needed. How do you alert all these Cajuns to go out and help?
It's not just Cajuns that help. It's everybody. We have over 6,000. As of last year, we had 6,000. I'm not sure how many volunteers we have in our
Yankees
system.
help too?
The Yankees, I got to give them credit. They help too. You know what I'm saying? Everybody helps. And at this point, you're not a Yankee or a Cajun. You're a helper.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I think, what was it, Mr. Rogers that said, look for the helpers?
Yeah.
And that's pretty much what it is. Now, sometimes that creates a problem because not every helper is a good helper.
Right.
You know, sometimes a helper's getting away.
Yeah.
A lot of people mean a lot of good, but that doesn't mean they're good helpers.
Right.
You know? But it's been a great ride to see that the humanity that people want to help. You know.
Yeah.
And pretty much as long as you stay off of social media during these things, you see a lot better of the world. You know, you really do.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So are you mainly contacting people through social media, like, hey, the need is here, or do you have some kind of communication?
That's a great question because social media is the greatest thing in the world. It's the worst thing in the world.
Right.
Because with AI, especially now, you got so much false information.
Yeah.
And then people say, this person needs rescued, this person needs rescued, and they may be putting that in 10 different groups or 10 different, pages or Facebook Marketplace or whatever. So this person may be rescued already, and by the time you get there, you struggle to get to them. There's nobody at the house.
Yeah.
And at that point, you don't know whether they're alive, they're missing, they're safe. So it creates a problem.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying it's not as easy as it looks to just go rescue somebody.
No.
Yeah. And then you have a lot of elderly people whose husband may have passed away, and then the lady may be living in a house. She really has let the husband take care of a lot of stuff. She may have a dog or a cat. Shelters don't take animals. So we go in there and we help them make sure the animals are taken care of or whatever, because a lot of these people, that's their family, that's their kid.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they'll drown over their dog.
We've had people that literally would not get in the boat because they wouldn't put the dog in the boat because the dog was trying to bite everybody.
Yeah.
And the dog was scared, So it's been a lot of experiences, that's for sure.
Wow.
We had one situation where a man's dog and a lady's cat were fighting each other in the boat in the middle of the night and dropped their flashlight in the water. And you talk about a mess there.
Oh, wow.
The dog bit one of our people. The cat, it was a mess,
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
Wow. So this deal in Hill Country, it's just so tragic. It's heartbreaking just to think about kids scared in the middle of the night, having to escape. I've heard stories of they were writing their names on their arm, on their bodies and having their name tags. Yeah. Just I can't imagine how scary that was. And then you and your team, y'all been out there, finding bodies, rescuing. What is that like?
So the crazy thing about it is this camp, they didn't have cell phones. They didn't allow them to have cell phones. So they couldn't reach out. So can you imagine being a parent, seeing this on the news or social media that, your kid is in this camp that's washed away and you can't get in touch with them? You can imagine what it's like going through the parent. So for us, it's, and then with social media, getting back to that, every person wants to take a picture of what's going on or whatever. So we try to keep that away. There's nothing worse than a family or a parent seeing their daughter or their son on social media before they're told about it.
Wow.
So that's a big thing. But I think right now the spiritual and emotional portion is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
The kids that have been found, deceased, of course, the 10 that are still missing. It's hard for those families to understand why their kid wasn't found and the other ones were.
Yeah.
And then when you see the sheer destruction of this, you wonder whether your kid suffered, and you wonder, how they die. Because when you look at this, pictures don't do it no good.
No.
When you look at this, it's like, my God, that was war for these poor kids.
God. So, your team is out there. I have found dead bodies before, and it's something to work through. It's not easy. What kind of have you seen a need for like ongoing support, like following, like post rescue for your team? Like
yes, big time. That's why our chaplain is there.
Okay.
One of our guys, he's a veteran, and he served some big combat.
Yeah.
He served some serious combat, and he's seen some stuff. And he broke down. When 2 of the bodies were found, he broke down himself because he's never seen a kid like that. And so it's tough. And it gets to you after a while.
Yeah.
And then that's the main thing is right now is just the support that goes through to helping these people.
Yeah.
I don't care whether you're macho man, savage, or whatever. It affects you. And I see it affecting everybody. There's not a person that I've seen that was involved in the heat of the battle of finding a body that's not affected right now.
Yeah.
And a lot of these people have kids of their own and grandkids of their own. So you sit there and you look, this one coach, he has a 6-year-old girl, and his 8-year-old was the one that we're still looking for. And he's sitting there, how do you tell your 6-year-old that your sister's missing and we can't find her? And she's seeing online or whatever, that other kids are being found. And then it becomes, why can't she find my kid? What did I do wrong for God not to allow me to find mine?
Wow.
But Tony is good, our chaplain is good at letting the families know that sometimes God does this to bring people together, and there is a greater power, and so it's comforting for them to know that. But it's still tough.
Oh, I just cannot imagine what these parents are going through. And,
then, we try to keep the parents offline. We try to keep them off of the internet from seeing social media.
Yeah.
Because, social media can be cruel.
Yeah.
People,
Oh, it's awful. Yeah. It's
necessary evil is what it is.
It is. Yeah. You can't not participate. If you don't participate, you'll be irrelevant.
That's correct.
But it's just.
For us, we needed to be able to show donors where their supplies are going and where their stuff is going. We also needed to show the help that's still needed, because after a while, the further we get away from this in the next 24 to 48 hours, this happened Friday and today's Monday.
Okay.
By Tuesday, tomorrow, Wednesday, Thursday, there'll be another disaster. There'll be another news story, and everybody will be forgotten. And there's still families that are looking for their loved ones. There's still people that need their houses cleaned and everything. So, unfortunately, social media is needed for us to keep the public's awareness to keep getting help.
Right.
So we have,
because everybody moves on to the
new story. Yes. And there's not a lot of help that's needed right now, unfortunately, because they're waiting to find the rest of the bodies, and also it's such a disaster of mud. How do you move 15, 20 foot of mud that's 40 miles wide and 40 miles long and a half a mile wide? It would take millions of people with shovels a year to do that.
Yeah.
So if people don't get to help, they go to somewhere else to help, and then they forget about it.
Right.
So we got to keep the social media going. Just got to monitor it.
Yeah. So what's like today? Like, what is happening over there?
So right now, today, this is interesting. That's a very good question. This happened on Friday, was the 4th of July. It was a long weekend, so a lot of more people were off. When a holiday happens in the middle of the week, people don't kind of take off as much. So today is the first day that the government and officials and everybody's back at work, back on the job, basically. So they're coming back to a war zone is what they're doing. And right now, there's so many people wanting to help. It's just herding the cats, basically.
Okay.
It's trying to figure out which direction we go. When you just have an area to search, let's say that we're trying to search a 40-mile section of a river that's a half a mile wide, we grid it off. We make sure that these people cover this area, these dogs cover this area. So right now, it's just a matter of everybody cooperating and saying, we covered here, let's go here. So we try to solve this.
It's very organized. It's very strategic.
It's very strategic. That's why it's hard to bring in just any volunteer right now.
Okay.
The other thing is, you can't just have any volunteer going into a disaster like this where there's a possibility of finding a body, especially a child.
Right.
Because it is traumatizing.
Oh, my God. I've never experienced that, never want to.
It's not something that you want to ever experience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My goodness. So they're it's gridded off. They're covering different areas. Once that one's covered, unless the floodwaters, then do you have to start over again?
You got to start over again.
Yeah.
The other thing too is you got to go through the mud and stuff. And these dogs, it's a lot of cadaver dogs.
So that's probably one of the most useful tools.
That's the most useful tool right now, yes. Yeah. We have thermal drones and LiDAR and stuff like that. But, the further you get away from a disaster, once a body sits there, you don't have that thermal capability as much,
Okay.
Some of this LiDAR stuff and all, they can actually penetrate the soil. They can kind of see some stuff there. But even at that, it's a limited airspace. There's TFR, temporary flight restriction, so you can't fly a drone. We have some of the most sophisticated high-dollar drones you can have that we can't even fly right now.
Wow.
And there's a reason for that. Yesterday, some Yahoo, probably a reporter, maybe a TikToker or whatever, flew a drone and it landed into the prop of a helicopter. So caused major damage to the helicopter. So there's a TFR for a reason. Trust me, we all want to get these drones up in the air.
Yeah.
But it's a struggle right now.
Yeah.
I think as the days go on this week, we're hoping that, every day several bodies are recovered. Right now we're concentrating on the 10 children that are missing.
Okay.
But some of these kids have been found 15, 20 miles downstream. So you can imagine 15 or 20 miles of half a mile to a mile wide riverbank and 10, 15, 20 foot of mud. You can imagine the challenge it is to find that person. And then we're getting back to that story. You got the riverbed that's 10 to 15 foot of mud. Every time you get a rain now, you're going to have more flooding, people that never flooded before because of all that sediment that came down.
I didn't think about that. Because that's a limestone or a granite.
Oh, yeah.
It's not mud, typically.
And, they call it a flash flood for a reason. It comes up in an instant. So there's not a lot of houses and stuff in that area. It's a beautiful area. That's why they had to camp there. It's kind of like being on the Amite River or something down here. You never flood, but when you do flood, you flood.
Yeah.
It's beautiful other than that. So it's a lot of second guessing going on. But
Yeah.
you know, you got a camp with girls that's a Christian camp. I mean, how can you talk bad about that? You know?
Yeah, it's certainly cruel to cast any blame, or you got to be careful even the questions you ask. But I mean, this happened in '87.
Yes.
Angel was pulling up old videos. I remember. I was 7 years old. I can remember seeing the videos of them rescuing people when that flooded. I can remember as a kid. So you like ask like what. But why weren't there protocols? Why weren't there life jackets in the camp, camp house? You know,
golly, it's so easy to second guess.
Yeah.
The majority of the people that we recover in the water, the overwhelming majority, 85 to 90% plus, are not wearing a life jacket and don't have a kill switch on the boat. The kill switch on the boat, you connect it to your wrist with a lanyard, and if you get thrown out of the boat or you hit something and you fall out, the kill switch gets pulled and it kills the motor. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of people run over because they don't have the kill switch on.
Wow.
A lot of people don't have life jackets on because, as men or as, macho people, it's hot. Yeah. But nowadays they have life vests that are thin that when they hit the water, they inflate.
Right.
So there's no reason to say these life vests are hot or anything.
Okay.
In this case here, happened in the middle of the night, they didn't know it was coming.
Man.
And the other thing is with these kids without phones, man, golly, can you imagine a parent just calling and calling and calling, and there's nothing to call because there's no phone they have, and the camp owner, the head guy, he actually died trying to help save the kids.
I saw that.
Yeah.
Man.
Now, the one thing is there's a rescue swimmer for the military.
Yes.
165.
And it's like his first
deployment. And he rescued 165 people himself. He's a rescue swimmer.
What does that look like? He has a team on the shore or something. He's swimming out to get them?
He has a team on the shore, and he swims to get them, and he brings them to the shore.
How exhausted
this is swift water.
was he?
6 inches of this water can take you off your feet. So when you say swift water, we're talking swift water.
Wow.
A lot of us have dealt with the Mississippi River, the Atchafalaya when it's high, and that's rough. This makes that look like a little puddle a lot of times. You got to realize this water is coming out of the mountains. And it's coming out of areas, and it's rushing down.
So he's got to start way upstream to get to somebody.
Way upstream. And they got ropes and different things like that. They'll drop them out of a helicopter. You know what I'm saying? A lot of times, and into there. And the fact that you rescue one person as a rescue swimmer in the water, that's a feat. But 165 for the first time, that dude's a hero.
That's wild.
We need to find him and make him a Cajun Navy member.
Yeah, no kidding. Honorary Cajun Navy
member. Yeah.
I need to look up what his name is, but that was impressive.
That was very, very impressive.
So, Angel was asking me, that's my wife Angel, what is it that people can do? Because right now people probably aren't worried about property loss. They're worried about the humans. They're worried about finding bodies. But and I've been praying. I texted you the other day, man, I'm praying for you, praying for your team. And prayer, of course, is so vital, works, important. But what's something like practical that people can do, to support this Cajun Navy
right now we have an Amazon wish list.
Okay.
And whenever you have a supply drop, a couple of days ago, the Baton Rouge Rougarous had a thing. They were playing the Seguin River Monsters, which is from that area. Now, they played on Sunday night. It was a 4th of July weekend. Not a lot of people go to these games. Let's be real. It's semi-professional.
Right.
And this poor team came in there on their bus. It's high school, junior college kids or whatever. There might have been 50 people, 100 people at the game, but the community of Baton Rouge brought supplies and dropped them off. When you say we need water, people will bring 20 different cases of water, different kinds. It's hard to stack. The Amazon wish list is all the same kind, so it's easier to stack, easier to deal with.
Okay.
Plus, it gives people an opportunity to think that they're doing something.
Sure.
So that's one way is the Amazon wish list. And that list changes throughout the day depending on our need.
Right.
We get in tons and tons and tons of donations, but we don't sometimes get what we really need.
Okay.
In this case, shovels, rakes, gloves, socks, those kind of things. You think about something when you get mud in your boots, you need a new sock. And as a first responder or volunteer, if you ever go on with wet feet or wet socks or mud, it's terrible, and just getting something simple as that. So that changes, throughout the day there. And then we're also able to take the supplies and get them to the right places in need, When you lose everything, people say, why socks? When you lose everything, you don't have socks.
Yeah.
You don't have medicine, you don't have those kind of things.
I know that was important to Lieutenant Dan. He told Forrest Gump, change your socks.
It's right. If you ever go Wet your socks and
Yeah.
wet your shoes and walk throughout the day, and you'll appreciate a dry pair of socks.
Absolutely.
So it's simple things.
So socks, probably new boots too.
New boots, yeah. And we have an Amazon wish list that people can go to.
How do you find that?
You can go to our United Cajun Navy Facebook page mainly, and there's a list at the top of the page. There. Right now, we're not really needing any more volunteers. We need more cadaver dog teams. One of the main issues is volunteers. It costs money for these people to go. And of course, monetary donations, we accept them. We don't ask for them because God provides. But right now we we need time. We need people to pray. If you can't help, you can pray.
Yeah.
Or you can share posts, or you can say, hey, a lot of people, they don't have the capability to go physically help. They may not have the money to help, but they can share a post. They can share the Amazon wish list or something. And that's one thing people can do. And the other thing people can do is be positive right now.
Yeah.
Not just in this, but in the world in general. A lot of people say stuff because they want to be relevant. That don't mean it's good to say.
Right.
Just take a minute before you text it or type it.
That's good.
Nowadays.
That's good.
Because it's
I type out text all the time that I delete. Kind of feels good to type it out. And then I'm like, what?
Sometimes I'll see you making a text and it'll say Chad is texting and then it won't be. So I think you're probably rethinking what you're sending me. That's a great thing.
Leave them on the bubbles.
Yeah, and I'm like, what's he trying to say? Yeah, but Amazon, and as you know, golly, there's been so many storms. I think last year during Helene, at the warehouse that we get from y'all, they had so many Amazon packages out there. I mean, my God, it was 10,000, I think, that came in the morning. I don't know how many came in the evening.
It was crazy.
I mean, we had tarps over them to keep. We didn't have room in the warehouse for them. And that was an overwhelming, support.
Yeah, I remember I was trying to buy a barbecue pit cover for the Blackstone you gave us. And I had to order 3 or 4 because it was getting mixed up in all y'all stuff. I was like, finally had to ship to my house because there's no shot at getting one package.
Right. And FedEx, Amazon, UPS, they do a great job of
That's
stuff.
awesome.
It's amazing that they do what they do. Not 100% perfect, but they're 95% perfect on stuff. And we're blessed to have y'all's volunteers and y'all's guys that help us out sometimes.
Yeah, it's incredible just to be. And I remember while all that was going on, of course, it was a great inconvenience to the guys that live at the recovery house. I was like, hey, this is us getting to be a small part. Of us just dealing with a mess and some chaos, a small part of helping some people on the East Coast.
Yeah. And
and it was, and I was like, hey, this is an honor to get to support the Cajun Navy by they've taken over our property. You're right, they are, but it's okay.
And you think about this, and I tell this to people all the time. They say, how can we help? Not everybody can help.
Yeah.
And that's just the life. They don't have the funds or whatever. A lot of people are struggling. But if you are affected by a storm, it's going to cost you something.
Oh, yeah.
Many a times that we've gone to bed saying, the storm was going to hit Pensacola. Wake up in the morning and it hits Grand Isle, for instance. So you praying that storm onto somebody else, basically, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
If you say, God, I hope this storm don't hit us, it's coming right at you. And if it don't, you can dig a little deep and give something, back. Whether it's a prayer, whether it's money, monetary, a gift, or sharing a post or something, A lot of people go to bed at night, thinking it's going to be all right, and they wake up and they've lost everything.
Wow.
And then for your guys to see, the little bit of inconvenience, it could have been them lose everything.
Of course.
It could have been them being the one trying to say, where's my next can of beanie weenies,
That's right.
So,
Yeah, it's kind of out of your fortune of not being hit, help somebody else.
Yeah. So, and then you realize that, a lot of times we've been on the ground in a deployment and, having to eat Vienna sausages ourselves, or having to eat, SpaghettiOs or something ourselves. So you know what it's like.
Yeah. So I would imagine, the Amazon wish list, buy something, send something, share y'all's post. I'm sure that's helpful. Just
sharing the post
word
is real helpful.
That's huge.
And just be positive nowadays. You hear a lot of negativity and just like getting back to the story, the 2 little girls that were 27 foot up in a tree that were found alive that wasn't true. Make sure that it's from a good source.
Yeah.
And even if it's from a good source, just make sure it's good before you post it.
Oh, during the East Coast, do you remember that they had that precious child that was like fearful, tears flowing?
Oh,
it was
my God.
fake.
So
I saw it and I was like, that can't be real. But it was viral.
And you look behind her and it was destruction and water and trees upside down. And she was holding 2 dogs, I believe.
Yeah, that's right.
And she was crying and she was in the water. And that thing went viral.
And it was fake.
And it came back to the person that started it was using that to raise money.
Wow.
And they raised a gazillion
dollars.
So be
who
careful.
You give to.
Also be careful of a lot of people spew hate and something they don't like somebody. I don't like the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
That don't mean I'm going to go talk about them. And,
Right.
and, it's not that I don't like the Atlanta Falcons. It's just,
it's not
who
your team.
dat, go Saints. You know what I'm saying? It's not my team. But I'm not going to go out there and dog them out and talk about them. So
and you'd rescue them if they're in trouble.
I mean, we get the Saints first, but we tell them to wait. No, but no, we don't discriminate. That's one thing we don't do. We don't discriminate, and you can't do it.
Yeah.
And you got to have thick skin in this thing too.
Yeah.
A lot of people, they say stuff they shouldn't say.
Yeah.
And, we just pray for them. That's all we can do.
That's all you can do.
But I don't think God would be blessing us if we wouldn't be doing this good.
That's right.
Yeah.
And if you weren't doing something that mattered, nobody would throw hate at you.
You know what? We don't just do disasters. That's the thing. I mean, we do more outside of a disaster than we do inside of a disaster.
Right.
And that's what's the blessing that we have. And I think that's why God keeps blessing us.
Yeah.
But I don't know, 400 kids on a fishing tournament on a weekend. That's a lot of kids.
That's a lot.
And what we realized is a lot of the grandparents that brought their kids were fishing. One lady in particular, I guess her grandkid was about 8. She was holding the pole. He was trying to get the pole from her, and I saw her kept grabbing it. And I went over there and I brought her a pole, and I said, "Look, ma'am," I said, I see what's going on here. I said, "Why don't you just take a pole and y'all can both fish?" Oh, okay. So, and it's a blessing,
Yeah.
And when you see people that say, "Y'all saved me," years ago, that's a blessing.
Wow.
We get a lot of people that are coming back to volunteer with us because we helped save them.
Wow.
And that's when you know something's good, and that's when you know
amazing.
God is good.
Yeah. Well, man, I appreciate you coming on. I appreciate what you do for the
We wouldn't
the
be able to
world.
do it without y'all.
Wow.
And different people, we wouldn't be able to do it because the churches are what everybody goes to,
Yeah.
in today's world. I mean, where else do you go if you need something? Where else do you go if you need comfort?
Right.
Where else do you go if you're broken and you feel like you reach rock bottom?
Yeah.
You can't go anywhere except a church.
Yeah.
So
And I think
y'all.
that's amazing what you do. You're rescuing, but you want to it's making an eternal difference since you're partner with the church community.
Oh,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And so many people are being raised by their grandparents or grandparents are raising them. And all the grandparents, they're 70, 80, 90 years old having to raise grandkids and great-grandkids. They're just trying to live the last few years of their life.
Yeah.
And so, with computers and phones and this, that, and the other nowadays, grandparents, they don't even know how to deal with their AT&T flip phone, much less all this other stuff.
Right.
So it's a blessing. And, to see these people, and especially your guys, I remember that day that we had so much stuff in the driveway, and the first day, a couple of them were like, "Man, when y'all going to move this stuff?" By the third day, they were driving up. They were moving it because they saw the struggle that we was in. So it shows you the transition of life and people. So, but thank y'all again.
No, it's an honor to get to serve alongside of y'all, and I appreciate everything y'all do for the community, for our country, for us as a church. I mean, from Christmas and outreach supplies. I mean,
it's a lot. It's definitely a lot.
Yeah.
And, we're starting early on Christmas this year, so. I always like to shoot high and shoot low and aim high, And so last year we did 265,000 toys. I probably got about 200,000 already in stock.
Wow.
So we're going to shoot for $500,000. I'm going to say 300,000, but we're going to shoot for $500,000.
That's
this
amazing.
year.
And last year,
and we're going to need y'all to help us give them out.
Heck yeah, we're happy to. Last year, we know the organization I'm talking about. We're not going to mention them, but we had signed up. They were supposed to get us a bunch of toys.
Yes, that's correct.
I remember we went there, and part of the deal is you have to give them some gas money. You have to do this. So I gave them, I think it ended up being $100. We show up, pull a trailer over there, and there was some flaw in the form. They gave us 2 Target bags full of toys. I'm like, and that's all the toys they were giving us to distribute.
Well, and I specifically remember that. And
I called you. I was like, Todd.
What are we going to do? Well, they had promised us a bunch of toys. In fact, we let them use our warehouse to store stuff.
Yeah.
And my dad had passed away like a week or 2 before
remember
Christmas.
that.
And that was making it real tough on me.
Yeah.
So actually I put a call out and I said, we're not going to make our goal this year. And we were off a little bit, because of that. And the day they were burying my dad, we had people coming to get toys. It was a week before Christmas.
Right.
And people were calling me while they were burying my dad saying, we don't have toys. They didn't they promised they didn't give them to us. And so it was an ordeal, and they didn't care at that point. So I went home and prayed about it, and I said, you know what, there's 2 things I can do. I can be mad, and I could blast them on social media, and I could be angry, or I can tell God, you know what, make it better next year.
Yeah.
Well, next thing you know, the people that were giving them the 18-wheel loads of toys called us. They heard about it, and they cut them off, and they're giving us the toys.
Wow.
So God is good.
Amen.
But it was definitely a rough year for that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you, man.
We got somebody this year. We definitely need y'all's help because we got a lot of coats and jackets this year too.
Okay.
We're blessed for that. we do such a good job of getting it to the people.
Yeah.
But we need people like y'all and churches like y'all and ministries like y'all to help get it to the right people.
That's amazing.
You know, y'all do great work. You know.
Well, thank you. You know, one thing I love is someone that sees a need and you know, there's two different people. Some say, man, somebody should really do something about that, and then there's some people that do something about that, and that's you, and that's your team.
Yeah.
That's Jennifer Richardson with with Keep Tiger Town Beautiful. I mean, somebody should really do something about that, and they do it.
Yeah.
And that's my kind of people. You know.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I told Jennifer too. You know, people were talking about getting her to run for office. I said, don't run for office. Just keep doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
You're going to make a better difference outside of politics.
That's right.
And she understands that.
Yeah.
You know, immediately when you run for office, you're going to alienate 50% of the people.
That's right.
And every decision you make, you alienate another 50 to where the only person standing is you.
Yeah.
You know, and you're going to make no difference in the world. So
absolutely.
Jennifer's made a huge difference in the world. And of course, y'all helping supply volunteers and stuff with them too. So that's great, you know. So.
Well, you and I, one of our common bonds is we're rescuers. You know, I'm rescuing. We rescue people out of addiction. You rescue people out of.
I'm still waiting for you to take me on a vacation, though. You promised me a Florida trip or something. I think maybe I dreamed it, but I don't remember.
That might be a dream,
well,
man.
Let's make that a reality. Let's get it go fishing or something this past weekend.
We need to go fishing, and I'd love to bring you to Los Angeles to see the Dream Center one day.
I would love to.
I know your team went up there, but
yeah.
We need to go make a trip up there.
You know, the Dream Center, we got connected years ago. I think you remember that our connection to the Dream Center, and we have John Neal, you know, and golly, my brain is a little bit blank. Warren Beamer.
Warren Beamer, yeah,
Pastor Warren,
because he had the Dream Center in San Antonio.
In San Antonio.
Yeah.
He was like one of my idols back then, you know. And of course, he was killed in a car wreck here a couple years ago. So, but yeah, I would love to go see that.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
I was amazed at that Dream Center, what they did out there.
Oh my gosh,
it's amazing.
Yeah,
and you know, when you're helping homeless and addiction and stuff like that, and trying to not just giving them something and saying, "Here's a bologna sandwich. I hope you have a good day." It's like sit down and praying with them and tell them, "Hey, there's help for you."
Yeah.
You know. That's what I like to be a part of.
Oh, you give them the bologna sandwich to start the conversation to help them change their life.
That's correct.
I don't care about feeding you. I care about helping you change your life.
That's correct. We have a guy, Scott Barkley. He's a veteran. He's a Marine, Free Burma Rangers. He does ministry stuff in Afghanistan, all these bad countries, you know. And he was telling me, he was with us this past weekend, and he was saying you know, even some of the soldiers they've killed people before, you know, from these foreign countries, they don't want to do it.
Yeah.
You know, they do it because out of love, you know, basically. And it's a ministry that he has too. So it's just a great thing, you know, and we don't want to see people on the streets.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
No.
But you got a lot of people that talk to them and dog them out. A lot of them, there's a reason, you know. Some of these veterans, they go overseas and fight, and they come home, and you know their wife left them, the family left them. You know, next thing you know, they don't think they have anything. They get on drugs, they get kicked out, and they're homeless. You know, from then and there. Yep. So everybody needs a hand nowadays.
That's right.
We just got to be kind. You know, be kind, or I say help, hush, or shut up.
That's right.
Yeah.
I like
That's right.
Well, Todd, appreciate you, bro. Appreciate your friendship.
Thanks a lot, and thank y'all again. And we may be needing y'all in the next couple of weeks because this Amazon thing is about to pick up again.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, so let's go on that vacation.
All right, man. All right, Todd.
All right,
Thanks,
you.
dude.
Thanks.